Hi, I'm Ann Zangri, Senior Manager, Marketing Services at Ingram Content Group. Our session is titled This Book, No Wait, That Book, Indie Books for Every Patron. Over the next 30 minutes, award-winning independent publishers will present upcoming books for both types of library patrons. Those that can't get enough pandemic and political content, and those that just want to escape. And now, I'll let our publishers take it away.
Hello, my name is Sarah McLaughlin, and I am the outgoing president and publisher at House of Anansi Press. And it gives me great pleasure today to speak with you about a book that is very near and dear to my heart, The Lost Spells by Robert McLaughlin and Jackie Morris. In 2007, when a new edition of the Oxford Junior Dictionary, widely in use in schools around the world, was published, a sharp-eyed reader noted that some 40 common words having to do with nature had been dropped. Apparently, they were no longer being used by kids and to merit a place in the dictionary. The news of these erasures became seen by many as a powerful sign of the growing gulf between childhood and the natural world. 10 years later, Robert McLaughlin and Jackie Morris set out to make a spell book of word and paint that would conjure back 20 of those lost words and the beings they name. From acorn to willow, The Lost Words was that book. A book that went on to cast an extraordinary spell on hundreds of thousands of people and began a grassroots movement to rewild childhood across Britain, Europe, and North America. I'm pretty sure you're all aware of that extraordinary book. Its size alone made it kind of undeniable. This book, The Lost Spells, is the sequel. And where The Lost Words was large and magnificent, The Lost Spells is diminutive, jewel-like, almost like a prayer book to nature. And The Lost Spells evokes the wonder of everyday nature, conjuring up red foxes, birch trees, jackdaws, and more in poems and illustrations that flow between the pages and into readers' minds. Robert McLaughlin's spell poems and Jackie Morris's watercolor illustrations are musical and magical. These are summoning spells, words of recollection, charms of protection. To read The Lost Spells is to see anew the natural world within our grasp and to be reminded of what happens when we allow it to slip away. I think you're going to love it. It's 120 pages. It's 6.5 by 4.5 in terms of trim size, and that will be inches. And it publishes on October 27th, 2020. I look forward to getting it into your hands. Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name's Peter Blackstock. I'm a senior editor at Grove Atlantic in New York, and we're distributed by PGW. And I'm excited to have this chance to talk to you, even though it's just virtually, about a novel that we're very excited about coming this October from Grove. And it is called Earthlings by Sayaka Murata, and it's translated from the Japanese by Ginny Tapley Takamori. And I hope some of you know Sayaka Murata's name already from Convenience Store Woman, which we published a couple of years ago at Grove. And that book really resonated with readers. I mean, people just fell in love with it. It was a kind of little cult sensation, I think you could maybe even say. And reviewers loved the book too. The New Yorker named it one of their top 10 books of the year. The author was profiled in the New York Times. Sally Rooney gave the book a shout out in The Guardian. And, you know, it's kind of exciting in particular to feel that buzz for a book in translation, and especially one written by a woman and also translated by a woman. And ever since we published that book, we've had notes of people asking us, when are you going to publish the next book by Sayaka Murata? You have to send me a galley. I'm dying to read it. And so it's very exciting to be able to say, watch out, this October, Earthlings is coming, and we really think you're going to love it. This book is wonderfully weird, it's intense, it's dark in places, it's funny at other times, and like Convenience Store Woman, it has a misfit protagonist at its core. Earthlings is the story of Natsuki, who's a young woman who believes that she is an alien. We begin with Natsuki when she's just a young girl, and she's going off on a holiday with her parents to a mountain cabin in Nagano in central Japan, and she gets to bring with her her best friend, who is a plush toy hedgehog named Piyut. And Piyut talks to Natsuki. Sometimes when she's not sure what to do, he helps her out, and he explains to her that he has come from the planet Popin-Pobopia in order to help Natsuki save planet Earth. And to start with, we really don't know, is this just in Natsuki's head, or is there really something strange going on? But As we get to know Natsuki better, and as she becomes a woman and gets married, we see that she really doesn't fit into this society. She isn't like all the other Earthlings. She doesn't want to just be part of what she calls the baby factory, going to work in Tokyo and living in a soulless commuter town. She wants something different from her life. And so she, together with two friends, decides to leave where they are and go and live in that mountain cabin in this kind of extreme form of social isolation, I suppose. And in the last 20 or 30 pages of this book, it surprises you in ways that you couldn't possibly imagine. It is completely wonderful and totally indescribably intense. And it's an unforgettable book overall. And I think it reminded me a bit of the movies of Hayao Miyazaki in its atmosphere. I think it's for readers of Kelly Link, Karen Russell, maybe David Mitchell. And this book, I think, is going to make waves in the same way that Convenience Store Woman did. And I think that by October, we may all be wishing that we were living on an alien planet. And this is the book that'll take us there. So Earthlings by Sayaka Murata, I hope you enjoyed if you get a chance to read. And thanks for all you do.
Hi, I'm Merritt Swanson from Coffee House Press, and this is Ellen Cooney's new book, One Night, Two Souls Went Walking. It's a beautifully written story told by a hospital chaplain wrestling with faith and duty during an eventful overnight shift. Cooney profiles the chaplain's sick and dying patients with warm, humane detail and seamlessly combines romance, philosophical ideas about the soul, and a very sweet dog angle. True to life, there's pain and heartbreak here, but also humor and resilience. And Cooney's writing shines with a rare, dignified, emotional poignancy rather than sentimentality. Blurbers are comparing the feel of this book to Mary Oliver and Marilyn Robinson. Ellen has written 9 other books, including The Mountaintop School for Dogs and other stories. The New York Times called her a remarkably talented author. O Magazine said she's a writer with style and heart. And the Washington Post praised her talent for creating fine, quirky characters. Ellen wrote this book years ago, wanting to honor women's working lives, the often invisible labor of hospital chaplains, and the experiences of the sick and overlooked. But with articles being written recently about the important role of hospital chaplains during the COVID crisis, this book feels like it has special significance for our current moment. There will be a reader's discussion guide included in the book.
Hello, I'm Keith Wallman, Editor-in-Chief of Diversion Books, distributed by Two Rivers. I'm honored to have this opportunity to talk to you about our September 8th publication, The Girl and the Bombardier, a true story of resistance and rescue in Nazi-occupied France by Susan Tate Ankeny. I've always been in awe of World War II escape and resistance stories, and so it's with a great amount of pride that we're making The Girl and the Bombardier what we think is an outstanding addition to this field. We really believe that there's some magic to it. For one, it's among the last of its kind. Susan Tate Ankeny not only interviewed her World War II veteran father and some of his fellow airmen before they passed away, but she interviewed the girl, the heroic girl at the center of this story. A girl who served in the French resistance, and in this case, a network for Allied airmen known as Shelburne. And Susan also interviewed some of the girl's resistance associates. Such opportunities to interview living participants of these two parts of World War II, the air campaign in Europe and the French resistance, well, they'll soon be gone forever. The number of American World War II veterans who are still alive dwindles every day, and there are only a handful of French resistance members who remain. The book begins with the enormity of World War II, and then it segues into a beautiful, intimate scene soon after Susan has lost her father in the early 2000s. She's looking through his personal effects, and there are 2 boxes. And the things that these boxes carried include an Air Force uniform, an unfinished memoir, stacks of envelopes, photos, mission reports, dog tags, and even the fake identity cards that Lieutenant Dean Tate used in his escape from Nazi-occupied France in 1944. In the envelopes were letters that ranged across the decades. Many of them were from one woman, Godelieve Van Leer. 65 years before Susan found these letters, Godelieve helped our bombardier escape France. She guided him and connected him to the resistance and ultimately to safety. and she was just a teenager. The bombardier's grieving daughter sets off on a mission after she finds these personal effects of her father, and she wants to find Godelieve, if she were still alive, and to tell the intersecting stories of Godelieve, Lieutenant Dean Tate, their loved ones, and anyone who played a role in it all. And for Susan, it culminates in a trip overseas to meet her father's savior. The book is going to be published appropriately in the lead up to Veterans Day, and it's an amazing, multifaceted World War II tale, the last of its kind, perhaps. It traces the transformation of a small-town American boy into a bombardier. It captures the thrill and chaos of an air war and the horror of bailing from a flaming aircraft over enemy territory. And it stars a little-known French resistance movement and shines a light on the courage and cunning of a heroic young woman who put her life on the line to save another's. The Girl and the Bombardier by Susan Tate Ankeny from Diversion Books, distributed by Two Rivers.
Hi, this is Glenn Yeffeth of BenBella Books, distributed by Two Rivers. I'm so happy to be here today, at least virtually, to tell you a bit about BenBella and about our upcoming book, Why We Get Sick by Dr. Benjamin Bickman. Very excited about this title, but first, a bit about BenBella. BenBella is a nonfiction house that looks for titles that are a little unique, a little special, have a strong platform, have often very deep expertise behind them, and altogether bring something to the marketplace that hasn't been seen before. We operate in a broad range of categories from science, health, nutrition, true crime, and many others. We have some specialty imprints, including Smart Pop, which specializes in pop culture titles, BenBella Vegan, which specializes in plant-based eating, and Matt Holt Books, which specializes in business titles. So you can see we do a broad range of titles in every category in the nonfiction space, but we're best known perhaps for a book called The China Study, which is a very smart look at nutrition. And what we love about The China Study is the same thing I love about Why We Get Sick. It is deeply grounded in science. It is quite practical for those who want to improve their health, but it's also very accessible. And that brings me to Why We Get Sick, a book I'm very excited about. Dr. Bickman is a scientist who specializes in metabolic disorders. So he really knows what he's talking about. He also brings a strong platform. He's had hundreds of thousands of views on social media of his videos, and he's become really expert at explaining these complex metabolic issues with great clarity and authority. And that's what makes him the perfect author for Why We Get Sick. Why We Get Sick looks at why we get sick. We are plagued by a set of diseases that 100 years ago were much less common. Alzheimer's, heart disease, cancer, diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure, and many others. Is this just the price of progress, or is there some underlying factor that's behind all these diseases? Well, it turns out that the research shows us that insulin resistance is behind all these diseases and many others. Insulin resistance is the key element that needs to be addressed if we're going to decrease our incidence of these diseases. And Dr. Bickman shows us how to do that, and he makes it clear and powerful. I think Why We Get Sick is going to be a very popular book for folks that, especially in this time of pandemic, are trying to get healthier and stronger. That's all I have time for, but thank you so much for your time. Have a great ALA, and I appreciate your time.
Hello, I'm Brian Ulicki, Associate Publisher, Director of Marketing and Publicity for The New Press, distributed by Two Rivers. The New Press, founded in 1992, has an unusual model much like public television and radio. We're a trade publisher set up as a 501c3 in the belief that books should be published based on their intellectual and political or literary merits, and not simply because of how many copies they will sell. The categories in which we are best known are progressive education, criminal justice reform, labor history, economic and racial justice, and immigration. Major New Press authors include Michelle Alexander, The New Jim Crow, Jim Loewen, Lies My Teacher Told Me. The late, great Studs Terkel, author of Hard Times, Working, and so many other classics. National Book Award finalist Arlie Russell Hochschild, Strangers in Their Own Land. National Book Award finalist Tressie McMillan Cottom for Thick and Other Essays. Our books have always been extremely well represented in libraries of all kinds, public libraries, school and university libraries, research libraries, and so on. So the book we're here to discuss today, Use the Power You Have, Pramila Jayapal, now Representative Pramila Jayapal. When we signed her up for a book many years ago now, she was then an immigration activist in the Seattle area, and so we thought we were signing up for just a book about immigration activism. She's very well regarded. She immigrated alone at the age of 16 to attend Georgetown, and then after she graduated from Georgetown, after a brief stint in investment banking, and especially in response to 9/11 and the government's response to 9/11, she followed her heart and her values into activism, becoming an activist. So fast forward to Election Day of November 2016, historic for many reasons, but especially historic because she was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. She was the first South Asian American woman to be elected to that role. She quickly became the co-chair of the House Progressive Caucus. She would go on to introduce the Medicare for All Act, and she's now one of the loudest voices fighting against injustices against ordinary workers during this pandemic and this economic crisis that we're all heading into together. So Use the Power You Have, A Brown Woman's Guide to Politics and Political Change, is her brilliant answer to the question of how do you turn activism into policy that really affects and serves all Americans. It's a passionately articulate memoir. It's also a political manifesto. It offers a wealth of ideas for all kinds of engaged citizens and hopefully future politicians. The book it's beautifully written, and I find particularly touching the afterword that is addressed directly to young women of color who are considering their careers and maybe a career in politics. As Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says in her blurb, Pramila's story and the important lessons she's learned along the way will inspire anyone who cares deeply about progressive change and how to achieve it. Her book isn't just a powerful reflection on why running for office matters. It's the best argument we have for why, with the stakes so high, more progressives, especially women and people of color, must get off the sidelines and into the game. So I thank you very much for checking out Pramila's story and for sharing it with your patrons.
Hi, I'm Camille McDuffie. I'm publisher of Columbia Global Reports. We publish short books on global issues and trends by terrific writers, from talented young journalists to established best-selling authors like Bethany McLean, Tim Wu, and Fatima Bhutto. One of our best-selling authors is John Judas. He is a veteran political reporter and author who's been studying political trends in the U.S. and Europe for decades. We published his election hit, The Populist Explosion, in 2016. This book explained the populist phenomenon that was sweeping the U.S. and Europe and swept Trump into office. The New York Times called it one of 6 books to understand Trump's win. In 2018, we published his book, The Nationalist Revival, which explained nationalism here and in Europe and how it is a driving force behind Trump's policies and the policies of so many leaders in Europe. I'm thrilled to present John Judas's 3rd book, The Socialist Awakening: What's Different Now About the Left, which we published this September, also on the eve of a presidential election. It's what I call the 3rd book in John's political trilogy for us. In this book, John looks at the emerging socialist movement in this country and in the UK. Who are these people who are so enthusiastic for Bernie Sanders? Why now, and what is it that they want? John explains how these new socialists are mostly young. They were born after the Cold War. They don't know what Marxism is, and they don't really care. What they're interested in is what John calls an early Christian socialism. They want a moral government. They want a government that's willing to intervene on issues like healthcare, education, and climate change. They're anxious about their future and their place in it. And they're having some influence, especially in the Democratic Party this year, and they will be a force to be reckoned with in this coming election. And no matter who wins in the fall, their policies are out there and won't go away anytime soon. To understand who they are and the importance of their movement, The Socialist Awakening is the book to read for this fall. Thank you so much.
Hello everybody, I'm Julia Abramoff, publisher and director of editorial at Apollo Publishers. We are an independent, New York City-based publishing house publishing adult nonfiction. Our distribution is by Ingram Publisher Services. The book I am very pleased to share with you today is titled Words to Win By: The Slogans, Logos, and Designs of America's Presidential Elections. The book will be published in September, around the corner from a presidential election simmering with verbal and visual propaganda and fervent attempts to sway the public opinion. Words to Win By gives context to this political manipulation by showcasing more than a century's worth of the slogans, logos, signs, posters, pins, and miscellaneous branding materials and campaign memorabilia that have shaped America's presidential elections from the 1900s through 2020. The book, which is being made in-house by Apollo Publishers, is a piece of nonpartisan political candy, highly designed with more than 200 bright images. Descriptive text gives context to the election, the news events of the time, and the mood of the country. Informational captions note the significance of items featured. For every election, material promoting or attacking memorable, noteworthy candidates is featured, but special focus is given to the material of the winners of the Republican and Democratic primaries, and especially the winner of the general election. Through this vibrant visual lens, we see what messaging candidates thought would be effective at swaying the public opinion in their favor, what actually was effective, and what may have cost them the election. We also see visual trends over the years, like how the 1960s ushered in a wealth of colorful political art, and recent years have utilized professional branding companies to create logos and color palettes. The book covers a patriotic red, white, and blue, with the promotional pins that show who you're behind. The pin top center is a design of Harding and Coolidge receiving the blessing of none other than Abraham Lincoln. Bottom left are Barry Goldwater's self-promoting, "In your heart you know he's right," and the LBJ team's response of "In your gut you know he's nuts." More recent ones are Feel the Burn, I'm with her, and of course Trump's Make America Great Again. Candidates' messaging is sometimes positive and uplifting, often bubbling with promises. Hoover promised a chicken in every pot and a car in every garage, but typically calls for change, and sometimes history repeats itself. Think Reagan and then Trump's Make America Great Again. The chapter on the 1968 presidential election covers the messaging of Nixon against Hubert Humphrey and the independent George Wallace. Here you see how the chapter opens with an image of the winning candidate, in this case an iconic image of Nixon, followed by a map of the states the candidate won, and text on the issues of the time to contextualize the messaging. This is followed by slogans and promotional material from both major party candidates, with context and visuals from other notable contenders. For this election, those include the likes of Ronald Reagan, George Romney, and Bobby Kennedy. While the November election will be emotional, divisive, and polarizing, we see this book as a breath of fresh air, one offering a break from partisan politics and a way to give context to what happens during election season. Thank you so much for listening, and we hope you enjoy the book.
Hi, my name is Jill Orr, and I'm the author of the Riley Ellison Mystery Series. I'm here today to let you know that the fourth book in the series, The Full Scoop, is coming out on June 9th, and I am so excited to share this book with you guys. It was so much fun to write, and I hope you enjoy reading it. And I can promise you, if you have read books 1, 2, and 3 in the series, there are a lot of questions that were raised in those books that are answered in this book. So hopefully you'll find it satisfying to read. If you're not familiar with the series, and if you haven't read any of the other books in the series, I thought I might just give you a little overview of the books, and you can decide if it's something you're interested in. So the series features 24-year-old Riley Ellison, who, despite her young age, is kind of obsessed with obituaries. And she ends up getting drawn into solving crimes in her small town of Tuttle Corner, Virginia, through the obituary column in the local newspaper. But we all know that books are, more than just their plot summary. So I thought what I might do is give you a little, try to give you a sense of the vibe of the books. And one of the things that came to mind is an analogy with food, because I don't know about you, but I'm thinking about food a lot of the time. So, you know how there are some books that are like a gourmet meal, and there's all this like rich, meaty prose and all this like imagery and gorgeous settings, and you can just like dig into that. Those books are super fun to read, and I do love to read them. Sometimes, however, I am in the mood for something lighter, and so along those lines, if I was going to compare the Riley Ellison mystery series to a meal, it would definitely be like a potato chip and Diet Coke situation. So what that means to me, it's light, it's fun, it doesn't take itself too seriously, but hopefully is still kind of satisfying and sometimes just what you need when you're looking for something on the lighter side. So if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, I hope you'll consider checking out the books. The first book in the series is The Goodbye Line, and if you enjoy them, you can read all the way through to the fourth book, The Full Scoop, which again is out on June 9th.
Hello again, I'm Ann Zangri from Ingram Content Group. Thank you for listening. We hope you found a book or two that you can't wait for your patrons to read. If you want to discover more from our independent publishers, follow us on Instagram at thisbook.thatbook.